Hey y'all, welcome back to the final episode of Tech Backstage of the year before we break for the holidays. And I'm sorry, Mark, like I was talking about backstage, it was too late. So if you guys hear my cat in the background, I apologize. But hey, it's a live stream, so sometimes we can't always fix everything, right? So Mark, welcome to the show. Mark Schwager, president and a co-founder at Monarch Tractor. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show and taking the time to talk with us. Like we were talking about backstage, I think this is something that I'm excited to talk about. Being an electric car owner and being somebody that grew up in the country around a lot of farming. When I had, when I talked to Carlos about having the opportunity to talk about Monarch, I was just kind of jumped at the opportunity. So appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with us, especially this close to the holidays. So yeah, thank you.
I'm super excited about it from my side. And
Awesome.
Don't worry about the cat. My 4-year-old meows like a cat all day.
At least I don't have the cat and the dog barking at the same time. So quickly, what I'd love to do is just, sit down and give the audience a quick intro into who you are, your background, and how you came to co-found Monarch.
Yeah, so I've worked in manufacturing and supply chain for my entire career, and I went to business school during the last recession, while I was there, found out about a tiny little company trying to make electric cars in Palo Alto, California, and I was like, well, that's for me. So I figured out how to get an internship there when I was in business school, and then came back and worked there. And I got to do a lot of really cool stuff at Tesla. So I got to work on the RAV4 EV program, led that from the manufacturing side, which was before the Model S. Got to work on the Model S and X factory. Got to lead the Gigafactory from concept through construction, which was really, really an awesome experience. Then I worked at Zoox, which is a self-driving car company here in California. That was made the first sort of bidirectional EV autonomous vehicle concept. And then from there, went back to building battery factories. So I worked with the two founders of Northvolt, and then built another one in LA with Romeo Power. And then while I was there, a guy I met at Zoox, Praveen Penmetsa, one of my co-founders here, we had kept in touch, and he was running his company down in LA, and he told me about this tractor that he wanted to build and scale. And I looked at it and I was like, farms. I've never spent any time on a farm. I don't know anything about farming. Why? So I looked at it and I was like, farming, no electrification whatsoever. So I was like, okay, there's an opportunity for electrification, but will it work? And then I looked at the farm probably differently from most people, just because I've spent most of my time in factories. The farm to me is a food factory. And I see it that way. And I looked at everything that had happened in manufacturing over the last 40 years with automation, technology, digitization. And I've always had these sort of technologies in the factory, and I saw they weren't there on the farm. Yeah. And if these technologies that we have in manufacturing could be applied to the farm, then we can look at productivity and profitability for the farmer completely differently. And all they need is the right tool to go do it. So we had to go invent that. And then I was sold on the opportunity.
Cool. No, I love that. And I think too, like just from, you're right, especially in agriculture and in farming, this is my experience, right? I'm probably wrong in some aspects, but my experience, growing up around this stuff is that traditionally the technology that was used was very primitive, right? It's, still, older tractors, and you go to some farms and they're even using tractors from decades ago, right? And those are just always there, right? And then it breaks down, they just fix it and they just keep using it, right? But also on the other side of that too, when you look at this push for, being able to use renewable energy, electrics and stuff like that, when you talk about cars and you talk about the impact globally, right? That's not where we can make the biggest impact in agriculture and in industry is where we can actually start making some of these big impacts, right? So it's cool to see that this is starting to go into agriculture, and it's starting to make an impact, especially on an industry that can use, like you said, from a profitability standpoint, even if this actually makes the farm more productive, that gives them, the ability to make more money, and it makes it more sustainable for them as I guess it's still a company, right? Farms are businesses.
Absolutely, they are, and
Yeah,
farmers are pretty shrewd business people.
yeah.
But you're absolutely right about that. Actually, 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from the farming sector, which
Yep.
is an incredible number. Actually, a diesel tractor emits 14 times that of a car.
Whoa.
So it's a significant amount of emissions that come from the tractors by itself. But you're right. If the practices can change because the economics allow them to do that, then we can address a much bigger slice of that 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions that really comes from the way the tractors are used rather than the tractors themselves.
Yeah.
And we're not saying farmers go do this for, just sustainability's sake. For a farmer, you can't make that argument because the margins on their business are just too small.
Yeah.
But if you can give them an avenue for greater profitability and then produce those sustainability gains, then it's a win for all. And so that's really what the company is trying to do.
Yeah, that's such a great point too, because not even just for farmers, like you're saying, their profit margins are small, but that's been a huge argument against renewable and clean energy adoption across the entire globe, right? Is if you're in a business, it's easy for me as an individual to go out and buy an electric car if I have the means as an individual to do it. But if you're in a business, especially one that has a small profit margin, and somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, you have to do this for the good of the planet," and you go, "Well, yeah, but that's going to take me negative." Like, how is that good for me as an individual? How is it good for my family? How is it good for our employees? It's not, because it doesn't actually benefit them. And so that's been a huge argument against adopting these technologies. So when you can present sustainability as being able to also affect the bottom line, that's where I think you got a win-win, right?
Absolutely. And I don't want to represent farmers, and I'm not a farmer, and I don't want to represent farmers as people who are not great stewards of the land. In fact, they're the best stewards of the land.
Yeah.
Because they know everything about the land that that essentially they cultivate on.
Yeah.
They want to do the right thing, because if you take care of the land takes care of you. That's just about what every single farmer has ever told me.
Yeah.
And so they want to do what's best for the land, but they don't want to go under in the process of doing it. So that's why it's a win for all. They want to do that, but they want to do it sustainably, and sustainably means economically to the farmer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit. Let's shift the focus here. I'd love to talk a little bit about the tractor itself. That's the primary. Let's just focus on the tractor right now. I think Carlos was saying there's some other stuff too, but let's just focus on the tractor for now. Tell me a little bit about the tractor that Monarch manufacturers. I'd also love, like one of the things I was thinking is like, there's got to be some different problems in like a road car, right? Like you guys, there's probably some different things that you guys have to deal with as opposed to building something that's going down like the 405.
Definitely, it is. So I'll start at the beginning. So, have you been on a tractor, Eddie?
I have. I'm not very good at driving them, but I have actually ridden in a tractor and driven a tractor before.
They are much more complex vehicles than cars because of the number of different functions that they have to do. So the way that we thought about automation on the farm was, it can't just be a navigation problem. It's not about autonomous driving. It's about autonomous operations, because that's what the farmer's actually doing. They're performing an operation. So in order to do that, what we had to do was reimagine what the tractor is. And the tractor needed to be completely by wire. So for a car, that's steering, braking, and propulsion. For us, it's all of that, plus external hydraulics, PTO control, independent hitch control, top link control. A number of different things have to be automatable in order to have an automated operation. That, and it's a completely electric vehicle. So We had a packaging problem. Obviously, it's a compact tractor, so it's a much more narrow vehicle than a car. So where do we put the battery? The other thing is no DC fast chargers on farms, no superchargers.
Yeah.
So how do we charge this thing, and how do we make sure that if a farmer needs to run 24/7, how do we enable them to do that? So our battery is swappable, and a person can swap it in 7 minutes or less by themselves.
Cool. Very cool. So just to like clarify this too, it's like you guys had to solve not just the electrical tractor problem, but also the automation problem as well.
That's correct.
So talk to me a little bit about I might be reaching here, but that seems like solving really two hard problems at the same time. Why did you guys feel that solving both problems at the same time was important for this new tractor?
Well, in our experience, we kind of learned that even if you tried to build the automation stack on a diesel tractor, you would still need a big battery for all of the electronics. So no matter what, this thing was always going to be a hybrid. The electrification problem also lets us address the economics associated with diesel, though, which is a big slice of the economics, but not as big as the labor slice of the economics. And finding labor. If you talk to a farmer, they'll tell you that they have trouble finding people to work on their farms.
Yeah, of course.
And then fields go fallow because they can't find people to work them.
Right.
And so it's really about how do we compensate for that? So, yes, we had to solve both problems because the economics feed each other between the two.
Interesting. Also, I kind of like to tack onto that question back to the 405. Making an automated driving system that has, I mean, I'm not a machine learning expert. I know a little bit about it, but if you're driving down the 405, you got striped white lines on either side. It's a lot easier for you to use that as like a bounding box for a automated driving system. But I have to imagine on a farm, it's a lot more complex than that because that's not the only thing that you have to take into consideration. So what were some of the challenges that you guys had to face building the automation system?
Yeah, so there are some things that are easier than cars. There are some things that are harder than cars.
Right.
Easier than cars is we don't go 75 miles an hour in a tractor.
Right.
We go 2 or 3 in an automation operation, so that gives us a stopping distance pretty short. So we don't need LiDAR, we don't need radar, we don't need those really expensive sensors that cars need in order to be successful at driving. And I know Tesla uses vision only, and they're a pioneer in that aspect. We also use vision only. And I won't say that that's driven from Tesla. I would say that's what our environment actually requires. It's just the vision, just because of that stopping distance. What's hard on the farm is what you're pointing at, which is the lack of real structure. There is some structure, but how do you know when it's okay to wade through a crop that's hanging over a row? How do you know what is a cover crop that's okay to drive over and what's the actual crop that you never want to hit? Those are the machine learning things that are very complex on a farm, to know what is okay to drive through and what is not okay to drive through. And of course, we do all of the object recognition. We can recognize people and animals and all of those things. And our default behavior is much easier than a car. We just stop. And we wait for human input if we do detect one of those objects. In a car, and you have a passenger that doesn't necessarily have control of it, we don't have a passenger in these automated operations, I don't know that you can necessarily just stop in the middle of the road on the 405. So that is one major advantage that we have in deployability.
Yeah. You're talking about actually getting outside input. Are these tractors, when you're talking about them being fully automated, right, especially going back to the labor shortage, is this something that I could just like hit a button and it just goes out in the field and starts running? And then like, let's say it runs into an obstacle that I could actually review remotely and, give the tractor guidance remotely? Or do I need to be there? Is it like a hybrid where it's like I wanted to be there, I could be, but otherwise I could just kind of like monitor it remotely? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, essentially you can monitor remotely. And the way that we think about it is these farms are actually operations that run like a business. And so you do have an operations manager there, or the best way that we think about it is that the tractor driver, the best tractor driver who's been there for a long, long time. We want to elevate that person to the fleet manager role. And that fleet manager should be able to review, look through any of our cameras. We have 8 of them on the tractor, and be able to see what's around the tractor to go be able to clear an obstacle. We can define the behavior that we want the tractor to have when it encounters an obstacle. For example, we can set, if you want that obstacle to move, or sorry, if you want the tractor to move once the obstacle has been cleared, we can set that behavior. Or if you want to clear each one individually, we can set that behavior. It really depends on how the farmer wants to run their farm. So it all can be done remotely. I have the app on my phone. I can pipe into any of the tractors that we have on Monarch's in Monarch's factory or on Monarch's test site, and see through any of the cameras exactly what's going on. Not only that, we can use the farm management system that we've developed to manage and monitor the operation. You can click a button and send it on its way, or you can train it. You can train it by putting your best driver on it and teaching the tractor exactly how to run that operation in that weird part of the field where the soil's a little bit different. So those sort of things we didn't want to lose.
Yeah, actually, that was going to be my next question was, is this a trainable, AI and machine learning algorithm? And I guess, too, how does that work? Like, for example, like, because I guess the other thing that's different about a farm is that the conditions are changing, right? So if you take a tractor to a specific part of the field and you train it how to, run a maneuver, or, how to operate in that part of the field, I mean, there's a heavy rain or something and it could flood the field, or, maybe there was like it was cold overnight. And so now the ground's a little bit frozen. And so the tractor's not able to operate the same way. Walk us through a little bit, like, okay, so I go out there and actually train it how to do the operation, but then conditions change. Is it kind of the same thing where it goes back over and goes, you know what, this seems unfamiliar. I'm going to stop here and wait for user input. And then just kind of over time, it just learns about the different like conditions in that, in its operating environment.
Over time, it will learn. But one of the reasons that we gave it a seat in the steering wheel is that if it comes to an operation that the farmer shouldn't operate because it's automate because it's a one-off operation, we want to give the farmer the opportunity to drive it just like they would any tractor that they've had in their past. The other thing is, if it has to be retrained for a particular condition, then the farmer can go ahead and do that. We don't want to take that away. Will it recognize that the conditions are different? Certainly. We can see the wheel odometry if it gets stuck in the mud. So we can definitely detect those sort of things and say, hang on, something's not right.
Very cool. Very cool. I love it. It's a good looking machine too, by the way. I got it pulled up over here on my other screen. It's slick looking, man. I like it.
I will let our designer know that he's got another fan. So
yeah, for sure. It's a good looking tractor. Talk to me a little bit about Monarch as a whole, right? So, we're talking a lot about tractors, but this is obviously a very new technology, especially in the agriculture industry. I was thinking about this before the show. I love that you guys are bringing green tech to a green industry, right? So you guys are, just like we talked about at the beginning, you guys are helping to introduce sustainable, renewable energy into the agriculture section. But talk to me a little bit about Monarch as a whole, because this is obviously very new to the industry. It's very new for just driving cars as well, but like this is even newer for agriculture. So talk to me a little bit about what you guys are trying to accomplish, not just with the tractor, but in general, and talk to me a little bit about the company's roadmap and where you guys are hoping to go.
Now, we see the opportunity to bring this technology not just into the compact tractor that we're making today, but into larger tractors, into smaller tractors, into the one that you have for your 1 acre, if you're a hobbyist, and then eventually into commodity crops in the future when the technology supports it. I think that ultimately it comes down to the same sort of things we talked about in the beginning, where profitability will lead to sustainability, and working our way through it is also with partnerships. So we're partnering with Case New Holland, which is the second biggest tractor company in the world, to bring an electrified and automated solution to one of their tractor platforms. And all of this is terrific because it helps us achieve our mission faster. I don't know if we'll ever be the biggest tractor, manufacturer on the world, but if we bring our Monarch technology to as many companies as possible, then we can start to achieve our mission faster. And that's really what it's all about, is bringing the wave of change into achieving that greenhouse gas emissions that we kind of talked about in the beginning of the show. So how do we do that as fast as possible? Is by sharing the tech with others, so that even though we won't make all the tractors in the world, we can get a lot of them with our technology on them.
That's a really interesting approach, especially to business, because I don't think, I mean, there's obviously, cases for this from the past where, people have done this and, given up their patent to allow other people to use the technology as well. But that's that's a unique approach, I think, especially, that I love that you guys are partnering with Case New Holland. I guess it probably shows where I grew up that I know what Case is. And I'm happy that I can walk into this conversation slightly informed and feel like I can contribute to it intelligently. But I like the idea of being able to partner with the other companies, right? Because, they already have this massive platform. Talk to me a little bit about what that's like. Are you guys licensing technology out to them? Are you actually going to be manufacturing the solution for them to then use in their adapted tractors? Like how does the relationship look with a company like Case?
It is a licensing relationship, and the opportunity on manufacturing we're still exploring, but they are an industrial company and they have significant manufacturing prowess that will take us years and years and years to develop. So I can't say enough about what it takes to scale manufacturing operations, having been around the block a couple of times on that stuff, and while I'm going through a challenging start of production here at Monarch. So, I think there's really no limit to what we can do in terms of collaboration. They've been incredibly helpful with us so far. For our scaling, though, we've decided to work with Foxconn in their newly acquired plant in Ohio.
Cool.
with a GM team that has incredible experience building cars at scale, and so they've taken on our project as well, and we'll be starting production there next year and scaling quickly into the thousands of vehicles per year.
Very cool. I actually have a friend who works in the, I don't know if it's I think it's the electric battery division for GM. She's a chemical engineer, so maybe you guys get a cross paths. But I would love to just circle also Foxconn in Ohio. That's really cool. But yeah, that manufacturing stuff, that stuff's hard, right? Like even just at like not even at scale, like dealing with supply chain management and the chip shortage. If you guys are, if that's a potential thing for you guys, I know it's been a big thing on the car side, on the automobile side as well. This is also just the software engineer in me not having any idea how to manufacture physical products, right? So might be kind of a naive question, but when you do a licensing agreement, right, and you're licensing out technology, and you talked about having an app on your phone, I want to get to that in a second, but when you're licensing out technology like this, what's the agreement look like? Does Monarch continue to support Case, like with updates and firmware, software updates? And is it an ongoing relationship? I can't imagine you would just throw something like this that's this complex over the fence and just be like, good luck, right?
No, certainly not. It is most definitely a long-term relationship. In fact, this isn't my first time doing something like this. That RAV4 project that I did with Tesla was pretty similar, where we took an existing RAV4 and we put a battery in it, and that's what we had. I guess 12, 13 years ago. That product came to market in like 2012 or something like that. And it is the same sort of thing where we're taking one of their vehicles, we electrify it, and then we take our autonomy suite and we see how we can make their vehicle by wire, as well as give it the automated functions that we're able to do. So it is a long-term engineering engagement. It's a long-term licensing engagement. It's a long-term digital engagement.
Interesting.
All of those things have to come together at the right time, and then we can be successful together going forward.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of like honed in on something there. You said autonomy suite. What is the autonomy suite?
It's our sense and compute stack. Basically, how do we connect to the tractor? How do we sense what's around us, and how do we control the tractor? So it's kind of those three layers, the planning and control part of it as well, which is only enabled by the full by wire architecture.
Gotcha. And then so from there, we only got about 4 or 5 minutes left. So I do want to focus kind of like the last part on your digital products and talk a little bit about, like you said, you have a like a tractor controller on your phone. Talk to me a little bit about how you support the tractors with digital products and what you guys are doing in that space.
Well, one of the ways that farmers have really loved the digital interface is that they can see where the tractors are on the farm. They can see, if somebody's driving it, where they are, if they're in the right row, if they missed a row. All of those things become visible immediately. You can see exactly where the tractor's been. The other thing is you can see the mode. You can see the hitch position. You can see the PTO speed. You can see everything digitally on exactly what's happening on those tractors. You can look and make sure that the implement is actually performing the operation correctly, all from the digital interface. If you want to say, "Hey, go mow block 2," you can make that happen with a couple of keystrokes and a couple of clicks. If you're working at the desktop console. So all of these things enable the digital control of the farm, either through the phone or through a desktop application.
How do you all manage the connection between the application and the tractor itself?
A number of different ways. Basically, if you can think of a way, we've installed it on the tractor. So there's the LTE and Wi-Fi, but there's also a couple of other ways that we do it.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that was, I always like look at my Tesla app and like sometimes like I'll be going to like do something like turn on the AC when it's August and it thinks that it's like, 35 minutes away from where I'm at and it takes 10 minutes to turn on the AC and I'm like, why is it not connecting to the car? So I was just kind of interested, like thinking about this. Like I'm kind of using the Mars rover analogy here, right? Where you're like, you got the tractor out in the field, you're like, oh, I think it's going to hit something, and you like send it a signal, but it takes 5 minutes to get to the tractor, but by then it's already hit it. So you guys actually employ multiple methods to actually connect to the tractor. So is there like failovers in there? So like if you're using LTE and then all of a sudden LTE dies, it just goes over to your backup.
Exactly, and we've got some intellectual property around how we do that,
Okay.
but it we've never not been able to connect to it. I'll say it that way.
Got it. I won't probe too deeply into the intellectual property stuff. We'll just leave it at that. So I guess with just a couple minutes left, talk to me a little bit about what you're excited about, just coming up, and where we go from here.
I think the best part about where we are today, we've been through years and years of development. We've gotten our tractor to market. We've made our first deliveries here in the past few weeks. That's been super exciting. What comes next is scale, and getting this tractor out to the masses. And one of the things that we've done is we've made it, it's not as cheap as a traditional diesel tractor, but it's also not that expensive.
Right.
And that means that it's something that the masses can adopt because they're going to recognize immediate savings as soon as they start using our tractor.
Yep.
So I think I'm most excited about getting to scale, which is the next leg of the journey. Now that we've gotten some units out and they're out there in the field and the farmers are using them, that's been a huge moment for us this past few weeks. Where we go from here is scale, and that's a different challenge. But a really exciting one, because then we start to actually be able to measure our impact significantly on ultimately what we're trying to achieve, which is lowering that greenhouse gas emission.
Incredible. And by the way, I just want to take a moment and pause and say congratulations for actually shipping your first tractors. Like, I think of a lot of people don't, well, I don't know if a lot of people, but I think sometimes we overlook how hard it is to actually get a product to market, right? Especially one that's this size. This is not you know, somebody coming up with like a, you know, a little like, you know, handheld, you know, piece of hardware. Like this is a large, complex piece of machinery that has multiple moving, you know, you have software teams, hardware teams, you actually have teams building these things. I mean, these, you know, you have supply chain. So anyways, I just want to say congratulations on that. I think that's a huge milestone in any company's journey, to get your first units delivered. And, anyways, excited to, you know, watch you guys scale into the future.
Thanks a lot for that. And I'll say congratulations to the entire Monarch team for
Yeah,
making
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a great group of people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Mark, we're out of time, but I want to say thanks for stopping by and talking about Monarch and the tractors that you guys are building. And I'm excited to, you know, just see what happens, especially just around the entire agriculture and farming sector in the future with this. And Carlos, before we go, do we have any announcements that you want to make?
Yes, one, Eddie, really, really quick. Actually, it's just an invitation. I mean, there's going to be, usually we display what's going to happen this week, but we're taking a little break for a few days, as you know. So I would just like to invite our viewers to go check over the next few days the upcoming interview section on the website, which the URL you can see it down below. Just go there and check upcoming, and all of the upcoming, well, the new or the upcoming interviews are going to be in there. They're all going to be great, just like this one. So please, folks, in 2023, chime in almost every day at 12 noon Pacific, right here on Tech Backstage. Don't miss it. Be here
Awesome.
or be square. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks again, Mark, and happy holidays.
You as well.
Happy
Thank you very much.
Bye, y'all.